The wind howled through the cracked windows of Jake's beat-up sedan, rattling the empty coffee cups in the center console. He gripped the steering wheel, squinting through the sleet that battered the windshield. The wipers screeched with every swipe, barely keeping up with the storm. It was past midnight, and the backroads of upstate New York were desolate, the kind of lonely that made you feel like the last man on earth. Jake's eyes burned from exhaustion, his hands ached from a 12-hour shift at the diner, and his heart a well that had been aching for years. He was 34, but the lines on his face told a story closer to 50. Life hadn't been kind to Jake Harper. Once, he'd been a dreamer, sketching blueprints for eco-friendly homes in a notebook he carried everywhere, convinced he'd build a better world one house at a time. He'd had a scholarship, a fiancée tilde copywritee, a future. But then came the car accident that took Sarah, left him with a newborn, and shattered his dreams into pieces he'd never managed to pick up. Now, he was just a single dad, scraping by to keep his 6-year-old son, Ethan, fed and clothed. The notebook buried in a box under his bed, gathering dust. Ethan was asleep in the back seat, curled under a thrift store blanket, his small chest rising and falling. Jake glanced at him in the rear-view mirror, a flicker of warmth cutting through the cold weight in his chest. Everything he did, the double shifts, the Raymond dinners, the constant hustle was for Ethan. The kid deserved better than a one-bedroom apartment with a leaky roof and a father who could barely keep the lights on. The road curved sharply, and Jake's headlights caught something, a flash of movement in the ditch. He slowed, peering through the storm. Probably just a deer, he thought, but then he saw it again, a small figure, sprawled in the mud, waving weakly. His stomach dropped. He pulled over, gravel crunching under the tires, and hesitated. It was late, he was bone-tired, and trouble had a way of finding him. But he couldn't just drive by, not when someone needed help. He grabbed his flashlight from the glove box, tucked the blanket tighter around Ethan, and stepped into the freezing rain. The wind bit through his thin jacket as he trudged toward the ditch. There, half-soaked and shivering, was a girl, maybe 12 or 13, her face pale and twisted in pain. Her leg was bent at an unnatural angle, blood seeping through her torn jeans. "Hey," Jake called, kneeling beside her. "You okay?" "What happened?" Her teeth chattered, but her voice was steady. "Car hit me. Drove off. I can't move my leg." Jake's jaw tightened. Who the hell leaves a kid in a ditch? He scanned the road, and no headlights, no signs of anyone. Just them and the storm. "All right, stay still. I'm gonna get you out of here, but we got to be careful with that leg." He shone the flashlight over her, checking for other injuries. Her jacket was high-end, the kind you'd see in a city boutique, not out here in nowhere. Her dark hair was matted with mud, but her eyes were sharp, almost defiant, despite the pain. "I'm Jake," he said, trying to keep her calm. "What's your name?" "Lily," she whispered. "Lily Carter." "Okay, Lily. I'm no doctor, but I've seen enough broken bones to know that leg needs a hospital. I'm gonna lift you, all right?" "It's gonna hurt, but I'll be quick." She nodded, biting her lip. Jake slid one arm under her shoulders, the other under her knees, and lifted her as gently as he could. She gasped, gripping his jacket, but didn't cry out. Tough kid, he thought. He carried her to the car, settling her in the front seat where the heater could do some good. Ethan stirred in the back, blinking sleepily. "Dad, who's that?" "She's hurt, buddy," Jake said, keeping his voice steady. "We're helping her." "Go back to sleep." Ethan nodded, too tired to argue, and burrowed back under the blanket. Jake buckled Lily in, then dug an old sweatshirt from the trunk to wrap around her leg, stabilizing it as best he could. "Nearest hospital's 20 miles, he told her. "You hang in there, all right?" Lily nodded, her face pale but composed. "Thank you," she said, so quiet he almost missed it. The drive was tense, the storm hammering the car as Jake navigated the slick roads. Lily didn't say much, just stared out the window, clutching the seatbelt like it was a lifeline. Jake kept glancing at her, worried she'd pass out. "Talk to me, Lily. Tell me something about you. Got any pets?" She hesitated, then said, A dog, Max. He's a golden retriever. He's probably worried about me. Max sounds like a good boy, Jake said, forcing a smile. Ethan's been begging for a dog, but our landlord's a jerk about it. What else? You in school? Yeah, 7th grade. I like science. Experiments and stuff. Science. Huh? That's cool. I used to be into building things. Houses, mostly. Wanted to make AM sustainable. You know, solar panels, rainwater systems. He hadn't talked about that dream in years, and it felt strange, like dusting off an old photograph. That's awesome, Lily said, her voice a little stronger. Why'd you stop? Jake's grip tightened on the wheel. Life got in the way. Happens sometimes. She didn't push, just nodded like she understood more than a kid her age should. They rode in silence for a while, the hospital lights finally appearing through the sleet. Jake pulled into the entrance, relief washing over him. He carried Lily inside, shouting for help as nurses rushed over. She's got a broken leg, he told them. Found her in a ditch. Hit and run. The nurses took over, whisking Lily onto a gurney. Jake stood back, catching his breath, as a doctor started asking Lily questions. She looked small under the fluorescent lights, but she was still holding it together. Jake hesitated, not sure if he should stay or go. He had Ethan to think about, and his shift at the diner started again in 6 hours. A nurse approached him. You her dad? No, just found her. She was alone out there. The nurse frowned. No ID on her, but we'll figure it out. You did good, bringing her in. Most people would have kept driving. Jake shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. Couldn't leave her there. He glanced at Lily, who was giving the doctor her mum's phone number. She caught his eye and mouthed, "Thank you." Jake nodded, then headed back to the car, where Ethan was still asleep. He sat in the driver's seat for a moment, staring at the rain-streaked windshield. He'd done the right thing, but it didn't feel like enough. Nothing ever did. The next few days were a blur of routine work, school runs, mac and cheese dinners. Jake tried not to think about Lily, but her face kept creeping into his thoughts. He wondered if she was okay, if her mom had shown up, if the cops had found the bastard who hit her. But life didn't give him much time to dwell. The diner was short-staffed, Ethan's school needed $50 for a field trip he couldn't afford, and the landlord was threatening to raise the rent again. On Thursday, after another grueling shift, Jake came home to find an envelope slipped under his door. No stamp, just his name in neat handwriting. Inside was a letter, typed on crisp, expensive paper, and a check. A check with so many zeros it made his head spin. Dear Mr. Harper, the letter began, my name is Evelyn Carter, Lily's mother. I cannot thank you enough for saving my daughter. She told me how you found her, how you stayed calm and got her to safety. You gave me back my world, and for that, I am forever grateful. I understand you're a single father, and Lily mentioned your passion for sustainable architecture. Enclosed is a gesture of my gratitude. I hope it helps you pursue your dreams again. If you're willing, I'd like to meet you. Lily insists on thanking you in person. Jake stared at the check, $100,000. His hands shook. It was more money than he'd seen in his life. Enough to pay off debts, move to a better place, maybe even go back to school. But it felt too good to be true, like a dream he'd wake up from to find the world still grey and heavy. He didn't know who Evelyn Carter was, but the name sounded vaguely familiar, like something he'd heard on the news. He pulled out his phone, hesitating, then searched her name. The results hit him like a freight train. Evelyn Carter, billionaire CEO of Carter Tech, a green energy company revolutionizing solar power. Her face stared back from the screen, polished, poised, but with eyes that held a quiet strength. Lily's eyes. Jake sat on the couch, the letter crumpled in his hand. Ethan wandered over, holding a toy truck. What's wrong, Dad? Nothing, buddy, Jake said, ruffling his hair. Just thinking. He didn't sleep that night. The check sat on the kitchen counter, taunting him. Part of him wanted to tear it up. Pride, maybe, or fear that accepting it would come with strings. But another part, the part that remembered sketching blueprints in the moonlight, whispered that this could be his second chance. The next morning, he called the number on the letter. A crisp, professional voice answered Evelyn's assistant. "Miss Carter would like to meet you tomorrow at her office in Albany," the woman said. "She's reserved a time slot at 2 p.m. Bring your son, if you'd like. Lily will be there." Jake agreed, though his stomach churned with nerves. He spent the day second-guessing himself, wondering what a woman like Evelyn Carter could want with a guy like him. He wasn't a hero, just a guy who couldn't drive past a kid in trouble. But Ethan was excited, chattering about meeting the girl you saved, and Jake didn't have the heart to say number. The Carter Tech building was a sleek, glass and steel marvel, all clean lines and solar panels glinting in the sun. Jake felt out of place in his worn jacket and jeans, holding Ethan's hand as they stepped into the lobby. A receptionist led them to a private elevator, and before he knew it, they were in a spacious office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Lily was there, sitting on a couch with her leg in a cast, crutches propped beside her. She lit up when she saw Jake. "You came," she said, hobbling over to hug him. Ethan hid behind Jake's leg, shy but curious. "Easy, kiddo," Jake said, smiling. "How's the leg?" "Hurts, but I'm okay. Mom says I'll be running again in no time." A woman stepped forward, and Jake's breath caught. Evelyn Carter was even more striking in persona, tall, with dark hair pulled back in a loose bun, her presence commanding yet warm. She extended a hand, her smile genuine. "Mr. Harper, I'm Evelyn. I can't thank you enough for what you did." Jake shook her hand, feeling the weight of her gratitude. "Just Jake." "And it was nothing. Anyone would have done it." "No," Evelyn said firmly. "Not anyone." "You did, and I'd like to talk about how I can repay you beyond the check." Jake frowned, uneasy. "The check's more than enough." "Too much, honestly." Evelyn's eyes softened. "Lily told me about your passion for sustainable design. I looked into your background, impressive work at Cornell, before life changed. Carter Tech is launching a new division for eco-friendly housing. I could use someone with your vision." Jake's heart stuttered. It was everything he'd once dreamed of, handed to him on a silver platter. But dreams had a way of slipping through his fingers. "I'm not that guy anymore," he said quietly. "I've got Ethan, bills, no time for Dad." Ethan piped up, tugging his sleeve. "You always say you wanna build cool houses. Why not?" Jake looked at his son, then at Lily, who was grinning like she'd planned this all along. Evelyn leaned forward. "Think about it, Jake. A fresh start for you and Ethan, and maybe, just maybe, a chance to build something that matters." He didn't answer, not yet. But as he stood there, surrounded by glass and sunlight and the faint hope of something better, he felt the weight on his chest lighten, just a little. Part 2. Jake sat in the diner the next evening, the check still tucked in his jacket pocket, untouched. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and the smell of burnt coffee clung to the air. He'd been replaying Evelyn's offer in his head all day, torn between hope and doubt. The job at Carter Tech wasn't just a paycheck, it was a chance to resurrect the man he used to be. But trusting in second chances felt like tempting fate. Ethan was at a neighbor's, giving Jake a rare moment to think. He pulled out the crumpled letter, reading it again. Evelyn's words were sincere, but sincerity didn't pay the electric bill or guarantee he wouldn't fail. He'd failed before. Failed Sarah, failed his dreams, failed to give Ethan the life he deserved. What if he took the job and screwed it up? What if he let Evelyn down, let Lily down, let himself down again? His phone buzzed, snapping him out of his spiral. It was a text from an unknown number. "Jake, it's Lily. Mom gave me your number. Can you come to our house tomorrow? I want to show you something. Please." Jake hesitated. He should say no, keep his distance, cash the check and move on. But Lily's face flashed in his mind, a pale and determined in that ditch, trusting him when she had no reason to. He typed back, "Sure." "What time?" The Carter estate was an hour's drive, a sprawling modern mansion with solar panels and walls of glass nestled in the woods. Jake felt like he'd stepped into one of his old blueprints. Lily greeted him at the door, hobbling on her crutches, Max the golden retriever bounding behind her. "You made it," she said, grinning. "Come on, I've got something cool to show you." She led him to a sunlit room filled with models of miniature houses, all sleek and sustainable, with tiny solar panels and green roofs. "These are Mom's prototypes," Lily said. "She's been working on them forever, but she says they're missing something. I told her about your ideas, and she got all excited." Jake ran a hand over one of the models, his fingers tracing the familiar lines of a dream he'd buried. "These are incredible," he said, almost to himself. Evelyn appeared in the doorway, casual in jeans and a sweater, but still radiating that quiet power. "Lily's been talking about you non-stop," she said. "She's convinced you're the missing piece for this project." Jake shook his head. "I'm just a guy, Ms. Carter. I haven't designed anything in years." "Call me Evelyn," she said. "And I don't believe that. Passion like yours doesn't just vanish. It gets buried, maybe, but it's still there. I saw your old portfolio. Your designs were ahead of their time. You could make a difference here." He wanted to argue, to tell her he wasn't that guy anymore, but the models in front of him felt like a siren call. He could see it tweaking the designs, adding passive cooling, optimizing the solar arrays. His hands itched to pick up a pencil. "Dad." Ethan's voice broke through. He'd been playing with Max in the yard and ran in, cheeks flushed. "This place is awesome. Can we live here?" Jake laughed, the sound surprising him. "Slow down, buddy. We're just visiting." Evelyn crouched to Ethan's level. "You like it here? Maybe you and your dad can come back. We've got a big yard for Max to run in." Ethan's eyes lit up, and Jake felt a pang. He hadn't seen his son this happy in months, maybe longer. They stayed for dinner and nothing fancy, just pizza and salad, but it felt like a feast compared to their usual. Lily and Ethan bonded over video games, while Jake and Evelyn talked. She didn't push the job offer, just shared stories about her own struggle as a building Carter tech from nothing, raising Lily alone after her husband died. Jake found himself opening up, talking about Sarah, the accident, the years of just surviving. "You're not just surviving," Evelyn said. "You're raising a great kid. You saved my daughter." "That's not nothing, Jake." He looked at her, then at Ethan and Lily, laughing together. For the first time in years, he felt like he was part of something bigger than his own small, struggling world. The next week, Jake made a decision. He cashed the check, paid off his debts, and enrolled in an online course to refresh his architecture skills. Then he called Evelyn and accepted the job, not as a charity case, but as a partner. He'd work remotely at first, balancing Ethan's needs. But Evelyn was flexible, insistent that family came first. His first project was redesigning one of her housing models, and when he presented his tweaks, a better insulation, a smarter water system, she grinned like she'd known he'd deliver. "This is it," she said. "This is what we were missing." Months later, Jake stood on a construction site, watching the first of his designs take shape. A small, sustainable home, affordable and efficient. Ethan ran around with Lily, who was off her crutches and full of energy. Evelyn stood beside him, her hand brushing his as they looked at the house. The sleet stung Jake Harper's face as he trudged through the storm, his flashlight cutting through the darkness of the upstate New York backroad. His sedan idled on the shoulder, engine rattling, while his 6-year-old son, Ethan, slept in the backseat, tucked under a warm blanket. Jake's bones ached from a double shift at the diner, his hands raw from scrubbing dishes, but the sight in the ditch stopped him cold. A girl, maybe 12, sprawled in the mud, her leg twisted at a sickening angle. Her face was pale, her breath shallow, but her eyes locked onto his with a mix of pain and defiance. "Hey," Jake called, kneeling beside her, his voice steady despite the knot in his gut. "What happened?" "You okay?" "Car hit me," she whispered, teeth chattering. "Drove off. Legs messed up." Jake swore under his breath. Who leaves a kid like this? He scanned the empty road. No headlights, no help. Just him, the storm, and this girl. "I'm Jake. I'm gonna get you to a hospital. alright. It's gonna hurt when I move you. She nodded, gripping his sleeve as he carefully lifted her, her sharp gasp cutting through the wind. She was light, but the weight of the moment pressed heavy on him. In the car, he settled her in the front seat, wrapping her leg with an old sweatshirt to keep it still. Ethan stirred, blinking. Dad, who's she? She's hurt, buddy, Jake said, tucking the blanket around him. We're helping her sleep. Ethan nodded, drifting off again. I'm Lily, the girl said, her voice faint but clear. Lily Carter. Nice to meet you, Lily. Hang tight. Hospital's not far. Jake drove through the sleet, the wipers screaming, his eyes flicking to Lily to make sure she stayed conscious. Tell me about yourself. Got any hobbies? Science, she said after a pause. I like experiments, building stuff. Jake's lips twitched. That's cool. I used to build stuff tour houses, eco-friendly ones, solar panels, all that jazz. He hadn't talked about that dream in years, not since Sarah's accident took everything but Ethan. Why'd you stop? Lily asked, her voice cutting through the hum of the heater. Life, Jake said simply, his grip tightening on the wheel. She didn't push, just nodded like she got it. The hospital lights glowed through the storm, and Jake carried Lily inside, shouting for help. Nurses swarmed, whisking her to a gurney. Hit and run, he told them. Found her in a ditch. Broken leg, maybe worse. A doctor took over, and Lily gave Jake a small, grateful smile before they wheeled her away. A nurse asked if he was her dad. No, he said. Just passing by. She nodded, impressed, but Jake didn't feel like a hero. He just couldn't leave her there. Back in the car, Ethan still asleep, Jake sat for a moment, the rain drumming on the roof. He was 34, but felt older, worn down by years of scraping by. Once, he'd had plans and blueprints for sustainable homes, a fiancée tilde copyright he, a future. Now, it was just him and Ethan, surviving in a crumbling apartment. He drove home, the girl's face lingering in his mind, but life didn't give him time to dwell. The diner, bills, Ethan's schooler, those were his world now. Days later, an envelope waited under his door. Inside, a check for $100,000 and a letter from Evelyn Carter, Lily's mom. You saved my daughter, it read. Lily told me about your passion for sustainable design. I'd like to meet you, to thank you properly and discuss how I can help. Jake's hands shook. The money could change everything. Debts, a better place, maybe even school. But it felt like a trap, too good for a guy like him. He searched Evelyn's name online. Evelyn Carter, billionaire CEO of Carter Tech, a green energy giant. Her photo showed a woman with sharp eyes and a quiet strength in Lily's eyes. Jake didn't know what to think. He wasn't a savior, just a guy who stopped. But the check sat on his counter, a lifeline he couldn't ignore. Lily texted the next day, asking him to visit. Against his better judgment, he agreed, bringing Ethan along. The Carter Tech office in Albany was a glass and steel dream, all clean lines and solar panels. Lily greeted them, hobbling on crutches, her grin bright. You came, she said, hugging Jake. Ethan peeked from behind him, shy but curious. Evelyn appeared, her presence commanding yet warm. Jake, thank you, she said, shaking his hand. Not everyone would have stopped. He shrugged, uneasy. Anyone would have. No, she said firmly. You did. She paused, studying him. Lily mentioned your designs. I looked you up at Cornell, top of your class. Carter Tech's starting an eco-housing division. We could use someone like you. Jake's chest tightened. It was his old dream, handed back to him. But dreams had betrayed him before. I'm not that guy anymore, he said. I've got Ethan, no time for a dad. Ethan cut in, tugging his sleeve. You always talk about building cool houses. Why not? Jake looked at his son, then at Lily, who was smirking like she'd planned this. Evelyn's eyes softened. Think about it, Jake. A fresh start for both of you. He didn't answer, but as he drove home, the possibility lingered, like a crack of light in a long dark room. Jake stood in the Carter estate's sunroom, staring at a table covered with miniature house models, sleek, sustainable designs with solar panels and green roofs. Lily, her cast clunky but her energy undimmed, pointed at them proudly. "These are Mum's prototypes. She's been working on them forever, but she says they're not perfect yet. I told her about your ideas, and she flipped." Jake's fingers grazed one of the models, the smooth lines stirring something he hadn't felt in years. It was like touching a piece of his old self, the guy who'd stayed up late sketching homes that could save the planet. "These are good," he said, almost to himself. "But the insulation could be better. And the water systems, there's newer tech for that." Lily's eyes lit up. "See, I knew you'd get it." Evelyn stepped into the room, casual in a sweater, but her presence still filled the space. "Lily's been talking you up," she said, smiling. "She's convinced you're the key to this project." Jake shook his head, the weight of doubt creeping back. "I haven't designed anything in years. I'm just a diner guy now." "You're more than that," Evelyn said, her voice firm but kind. "I saw your old portfolio. Your work was visionary. Passion like that doesn't disappear, it just waits." He wanted to argue, to say he was too broken, too busy, too stuck. But the models called to him, whispering ideas he thought he'd buried. Ethan ran in from the yard, cheeks flushed, Max the golden retriever at his heels. "Dad, this place is awesome. Can we come back?" Jake laughed, the sound loosening something in his chest. "We'll see, buddy." They stayed for dinner, a pizza and salad, simple but warm. Lily and Ethan bonded over a video game, their laughter echoing. Jake and Evelyn talked, and for once, he didn't hold back. He told her about Sarah, the accident that stole her, the years of just getting by. Evelyn listened, sharing her own story of building Carter Tech alone, raising Lily after her husband's death. "You're not just surviving," she said. "You're raising a good kid. You saved mine. That's strength." Jake looked at Ethan, giggling with Lily, and felt a spark of something he hadn't in years, a hope. Maybe the check was still in his pocket, uncashed, a symbol of a choice he hadn't made. He could pay off debts, move somewhere better, but Evelyn's offer was bigger. It was a chance to rebuild himself. The next week, he made a decision. He cashed the check, cleared his debts, and signed up for an online architecture course to brush up on the latest tech. Then he called Evelyn. "I'm in," he said, heart pounding. "But I'm doing this my way. Part-time at first, for Ethan. Family first," she agreed. "We'll make it work." His first project was tweaking one of her housing models. He spent nights sketching, ideas flowing like they hadn't in years. When he presented his change to thicker insulation, a smarter rainwater system, Evelyn's face lit up. "This is it," she said. "This is what we needed." Months later, Jake stood on a construction site, watching his design take shape. A small, affordable home, all clean energy and smart systems. Ethan and Lily ran around nearby, her cast long gone, their laughter mixing with the hum of machinery. Evelyn stood beside him, her shoulder brushing his. "You did this," she said. "We did," he corrected, and for the first time in years, he felt whole. The house wasn't just bricks and solar panels, so it was proof he could still build something that mattered. Ethan grabbed his hand, pointing at the half-built walls. "Is that your cool house, Dad?" And Lily gave Jake a small, grateful smile before they wheeled her away. A nurse asked if he was her dad. "No," he said. "Just passing by." She nodded, impressed, but Jake didn't feel like a hero. He just couldn't leave her there. Back in the car, Ethan still asleep, Jake sat for a moment, the rain drumming on the roof. He was 34, but felt older, worn down by years of scraping by. Once, he'd had plans and blueprints for sustainable homes, a fiancée tilde copyright he, a future. Now, it was just him and Ethan, surviving in a crumbling apartment. He drove home, the girl's face lingering in his mind, but life didn't give him time to dwell. The diner, bills, Ethan's school, those were his world now. Days later, an envelope waited under his door. Inside, a check for $100,000 and a letter from Evelyn Carter, Lily's mom. "You saved my daughter," it read. "Lily told me about your passion for sustainable design. I'd like to meet you, to thank you properly and discuss how I can help." Jake's hands shook. The money could change everything: a debts, a better place, maybe even school. But it felt like a trap. too good for a guy like him. He searched Evelyn's name online. Evelyn Carter, billionaire CEO of Carter Tech, a green energy giant. Her photo showed a woman with sharp eyes and a quiet strength in Lily's eyes. Jake didn't know what to think. He wasn't a savior, just a guy who stopped. But the check sat on his counter, a lifeline he couldn't ignore. Lily texted the next day, asking him to visit. Against his better judgment,